Yes, Manatsu, we all know your swole VA is into that stuff.
Moving right along.
And we opened on everyone rightfully excited for their summer vacations. Well, everyone sans the mermaid.
Hey, at least you avoid the extended vacations from last year.
Still, Laura's fans tried to win her over to the benefits of summer breaks, which included going out to the pools, festivals, and other outside activities, which I'm sure most kids these days do and don't practice to become hikikomori. For the Tropical Club, they discussed their early plans for the vacation, and after learning that Manatsu was heading back to her island home, they just decided to tag along in a bit of a spur-of-the-moment kind of thing, though I guess going to a neighboring island shouldn't be all that costly.
Not exactly sure what the rates are for two fictional locations in Japan are, but if they're anything like a trip from Honolulu to my hometown, then it can't be that expensive.
And yeah, I know they end up taking a boat instead because I guess that's how Toei thinks we in the islands get around, and yeah, no. Still, why don't we play a game? What's gonna come first? My YouTube channel returning, or the show getting a new opening? You can guess what my money's on. Anyway, the next day, the Tropical Club did the most practical thing and began discussing their itinerary for their little trip. This was a really good scene as we got to see a little bit of everyone's personality. Of course, we got stuff like Manatsu's energy, Sango being all about aesthetics and also kind of sticking out, Minori being fascinated with more fantastical stuff like in her novels, and Asuka just kind of being there to anchor everyone back to reality, which this team really needs. Though the thing that caught everyone's attention were the legends of a hidden private treasure on Manatsu's island.
Are there by chance any rare powers down there? FYI, I'm looking forward to that reunion special.
But yeah, all of this information was imparted to us really well, and there were even little touches like Minori organizing the itinerary while Manatsu kept talking, or Laura constantly turning her head to get across her curiosity for the human world. It gave the whole scene a very strong sense of everyone's personality without even really needing to spell it out for us. Good stuff, though I'm not too surprised considering who the storyboarder was this week, but more on that later. Ultimately, they ended up with a very impractical itinerary because, of course, Manatsu wanted to do everything even though there's only 24 hours in a day. Thus, her mother encouraged them to follow Manatsu's usual mantra and prioritize what was important to them, which was likely a plot development that would become a lot more important next week. Meanwhile, the Witch's Lair, the villains, who at this point probably knew their character arcs weren't going anywhere for at least a little while more, were being forced to deploy by, as I always say, the real big bad of the show. And to get them off their lazy asses, he offered to give them paid vacations after they pulled off at least one monster attack.
Yeah, because the average workplace will totally let you take a summer break and not force you to do overtime or anything.
Meanwhile, Manatsu and Laura were packing their bags, with the former packing some interesting stuff.
Well, here's hoping it doesn't get the Minami suitcase treatment. Seriously, what was in that thing?
Later that night, after encouraging Laura to get as much sleep as possible, Manatsu couldn't close her eyes.
Put down those pens right now, fanfic writers!
Besides, nothing really happened, as she fell asleep faster than I do after a few drinks. Still a cute scene with a good punchline, as well as a little development for Laura, who admitted that she was excited for their trip too. The next day, we got another hilarious scene where more members of the Tropical Club proved that they needed to get their priorities straight, with Sango bringing enough makeup for a movie shoot, and Minori proving the benefits of switching over to ebooks. Of course, being the most sane member of this team, Asuka brought a significant, though still very manageable amount of luggage. this included bringing lunch for the entire club in a nice callback to the bento episode, appropriate since both of these episodes were written by the same writer. And as a cute little quirk, she also brought her personal pillow from home. It's certainly a lot less intrusive than what we saw last week with Minori. However, Chongi soon arrived to launch his attack.
Pretty sure that doesn't apply to anyone on the West Coast right now.
He was so distracted by the heat that I guess he just threw the Yaneda orb at random and ended up hitting Manatsu's suitcase by chance. Funny, I thought they kind of needed an actual target to make those things work, but whatever. Manatsu holding onto the monster's arm for dear life was hilarious. Said monster, I guess was supposed to resemble your typical mimic from an RPG with the big teeth and everything.
Pity, I was kind of hoping we would get the next in the basket case films.
It began devouring everyone's motivation as well as the animation budget. Yeah, from this point on in the episode, there was a very noticeable shift in animation that made it clear that this episode had more than one animation director, 4 in fact, but more on that at the end. Anyway, the Precure transformed to fight the mimic.
Well, except for maybe during the Olympics.
And again, while the animation did take a little dip with everyone going a little off model, it was somewhat made up for thanks to the quirkiness of the monster, which also happened to be Manatsu's quirkiness.
That's
all I need too! I don't need one other thing! Not one, I need this!
On a side note, this would have been a perfect time for them to debut a new soundtrack every bit as epic as the Hot Bloodline, but oh well. They were also running out of time as they needed to beat Manatsu's mother at the ferry for their island, so yeah, the greatest threat in this episode was them possibly needing to reschedule their departure. Granted, I can understand not wanting to go through that hassle, so Manatsu spotted the enlarged key to her suitcase, allowing them to shut it up.
Lock on! I knew I picked the right accessory for this season.
But yeah, overall, pretty good final sequence where the entire team managed to contribute to the monster's defeat and kind of made up for the animation drop. As for the ferry, they just barely made it, so yeah, no big deal there. Meanwhile, Butler discovered some information likely about the alleged treasure on Manatsu's island, which included the Holy Grail?
Well, sorry to tell you, dude, but you're a little too late to join in on the Serpent Summer Festival event.
With that, the episode ended with them making it to Manatsu's island and her father's very hairy legs. Seriously, dude, get some sweatpants.
This was pretty good for an episode that's clearly more just build up for actual developments next week. The story, comedy, and most importantly, character interactions flowed really well during the slice of life half of this episode. It was especially well put together as we did get to see at least a little bit of everyone's personality on full display. That said, while the fight wasn't bad, it was also clear that they just handed it off to their B team of animators. Though again, that might be because next week there's going to be a lot more developments.
I was kind of surprised to learn that storyboarding for this one was going to be handled by one of my personal favorites in the industry, Chiaki Kon. And while she sadly has not been given nearly enough to work on in this franchise, if you've seen her work on stuff like Higurashi, you'll know that she can do slice of life content really well, often trying to get the most personality out of every character in every scene. Thus, while she technically didn't direct this episode, her fingerprints were all over it, with scenes where characters were all doing at least a little something to get across their personalities. Combine this with another script from Mio Inoue, who puts more focus on this team's dynamics, and you get an episode where they more than make up for some of the inconsistencies in the animation. Again, nothing too bad, it was just pretty clear that there were 4 animation directors working on this one episode, with one of them, Hiroshi Numata, still being relatively new, especially compared to veterans like Nobuto Akita, Alice Nario, and Francis Kaneda. That aside, this was a fun little episode that seems to be building towards a plot episode, where they're gonna get another power-up just 5 episodes after they got their 6th Ranger. Yeah, they might be rushing a few things ahead of the aforementioned Olympics. Still, this was a very enjoyable outing that provides some relief from these hotter summer months.
Hopefully, this should be the last video we have to upload to BitChute, as the YouTube channel should be back by Monday or so. I swear, that site has to be run by a bunch of monkeys, because 37 of the original 44 strikes were lifted from the channel, and yet because they didn't file all of the appeals at the same time, the final 7 strikes that are keeping the channel lock are still in effect. It's been rough, but I think we're through the worst of it, and if you're watching this video on YouTube, then well, I think it's pretty obvious it all worked out in the end. And I have built a bit of a backlog, so you'll at least have stuff to watch as I try to play catch up after 3 weeks of being away. So look forward to it. And until then though, for now my friends, and hold on. Looks like inter-island travel rates have gone down yet again. I hope our economy survives all this.